Ladies and gentlemen, federal employees, today we're talking about that age-old battle between a TSP and an IRA. Which one is better for you? Now, let me summarize it for you really quick. If you're still working, by far the TSP is the better of the two. Now, if you're already maxing out the TSP, already putting as much as they will let you put in, then you can start looking at IRAs. But even then, TSP, while working again, is better on many fronts. But in retirement, that's where they become pretty even, and it just becomes a list of pros and cons, and which we're going to go over. There's lots of pros and cons. IRA is really good at some things. TSP is really good at other things in retirement. So for you to get the most out of your money in retirement, you've got to understand the differences, which we're going to dive into today. Now, if you're a federal employee and you want to maximize your benefits, consider subscribing, join the community. We talk about how to maximize your federal benefits every single week, and you won't regret it. Okay, let's dive in. Number one, I'm going to go through all these factors, by the way, and talk through which one is better, TSP versus IRA. When it comes to the simple factor here, being simple, the TSP wins by a landslide. The TSP does have limitations, certainly, but as a whole, it's very simple. And you're familiar with it. These two are huge advantages of the TSP. There's very limited fund options, which is there's pros and cons there, but because there's so few, the odds of you making big mistakes are relatively small. I mean, there's lots of mistakes I see in the TSP all the time, but again, over in an IRA where there's thousands of options for investments and how to take withdrawals and a bunch of things, then having something that's simple and familiar, especially if you're not an investment person, right? If you don't look this stuff up and you're not very familiar with everything out there, then something that's simple and familiar is a huge advantage, which again, so far, that's TSP. By far, TSP is going to be more simple and more familiar to you in retirement if you kept it there, definitely. But let's talk about some of the things IRA does better. For example, Roth Conversions. Now, if you're not familiar with these, long story short, as you know, within the TSP, you've got two sides. You've got the Roth side and the traditional side. The Roth is after tax, the traditional is pre-tax. In an IRA, right, if we said, hey, IRA, you can actually move money from the traditional side over to the Roth over time. Within the TSP, you cannot do that. If you want to move over to the Roth, you'd have to, of course, move to an IRA to do that. And what a lot of people do is they wait for, let's say, low tax years, maybe taxes go down a little bit, or they have lower income, and they get money over when their taxes are relatively low. I've got whole videos on Roth Conversions. I'm not going to go into it in super in-depth. Just know there's some strategies that, like Roth Conversions, that TSP just doesn't let you do, simple and straightforward. They just don't allow you to do, while an IRA can. One of those other things, or for example, what to sell. Now, let me explain what that means. If you have in the TSP, let's say you've got some G fund and some C fund. Well, let's say the market's not doing well, so your C fund is down, right? The value of it is down, okay? Well, if you're going to take a withdrawal in retirement, maybe you say, look, I want to go take this trip, but I don't want to have to sell my C fund when the market is down, right? Because when something's worth less, right, when the market's down, you don't want to sell it at that time. That's a bad idea, okay? So you said, hey, I just want to sell for my G fund. However, the TSP doesn't let you do that. They will sell it proportionally. If you take withdrawal, they'll take it proportional to whichever funds you have. So TSP doesn't let you do that, but IRAs, you have complete control over which funds you pull from. Okay, you got complete control there, while TSP doesn't give you that control. Next, tax withholding. Now, for most types of TSP withdrawals, most types, not all, but most, TSP will have a default 20% withholding. Okay, so if you take $100,000 out, they'll withhold $20,000, 20%. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to owe 20%. That's just what they withhold. For example, out of your paychecks, you withhold money every single paycheck. Does that mean that's exactly what you're going to owe? Well, no, it depends, right? If you're not withholding enough, come April 15th of the next year, you're going to owe taxes. If you paid too much, then you're going to get a refund. Same with this. If 20% is too high, you'll get a refund come the next tax return. If it's too low, you'll owe money. This is, again, just their default. But for most types of TSP withdrawals, you can't do under 20%. You can't do any less. So if you're in the 12% bracket, you're giving 8% of your money to the government for however long they've got it, right? Interest-free loan. They'll love it, right? They'll love it. So long story short, it's nice to have more control on the withholdings, okay? Now, you could always do more than 20%. You can't just do less. So if you want more control withholding, certainly IRAs do that, okay? Next, QCDs. QCDs. Let me explain what a QCD is really quick. So as we all know, whenever you have traditional retirement accounts that are pre-tax, okay? That could be traditional TSP, traditional IRA. In your 70s, depending on your age, you'll have RMDs, required minimum distributions, when the government forces you to pull money out. Okay, look up RMDs if you're not familiar with it, but you're going to be required to start pulling money out regardless of whether you want to or not. And you can take a portion or all of your RMD and you can send it to a charity of your choice. Again, QCD, that's what it's called, Qualified Charitable Distribution. You can send it directly to a charity of your choice. And that RMD money, which is normally taxable, which impacts your tax bracket and Medicare premiums and impacts everything, that money that went to that charity isn't included in your income at all. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's by far the most tax efficient way to give to charity. It is really effective. However, again, TSP doesn't let you do this. An IRA is the only one that would actually let you do this, okay? So again, when it comes to being simple and familiar, TSP wins. When it comes to some other factors, IRA has the upper hand. Just depends what you value. Now, last two things, investments and fees, okay? Now, when it comes to the investment options, as you know in the TSP, there's the 5 core fund options, okay? You've got G fund, C fund, S fund, F, and I, or whatever I missed, right? And then you've got the mutual fund window, which again, most people shouldn't use because the fees over there are actually quite high. And then you've got the L funds. But long story short, the investment options are relatively simple, okay? And the fees in all of the TSP funds are very low. They're right around, this fluctuates, but on average they're about 0.05%, okay? 0.05%-ish, okay? Now, in an IRA, there are thousands of investment options. You can invest in individual companies, you can invest in gold, you can invest in basically whatever you want in an IRA. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of options, which for some people, that's awesome. They want more options for investments, but because there's so many options, there's a lot of options that just aren't any good, right? When you got lots and lots of options, a lot of them are just junk, okay, and you don't want them. So if you don't know what you're looking for, you may end up with worse investments than an IRA. Now, there's a lot of investments that are really good. There's actually funds in an IRA that are almost identical to the TSP funds, if not identical exactly, and they actually have lower fees than the TSP. Okay, there's a lot of Vanguard funds that are that way. There's a lot of funds, again, that are basically the same as TSP funds, but actually lower in fees. You just have to know what you're looking for, okay? You just got to wade through. It's like the needle in the haystack. The haystack's just really big. You got to find the ones that are actually good, which aren't hard to find if you know what you're looking for, right? So long story short, when it comes to investments, again, IRA just has a lot more options, which can be good or bad depending on what you want. And an IRA doesn't inherently have higher fees. It just depends on which funds you're invested in, which again, IRAs can actually have lower fees than TSP if you find low fee funds, okay? But in general, TSP, all the funds they have in TSP, all the core funds, they have low fees, which is really nice, okay? So long story short, if the goal for you is to keep it as simple as possible, it's very hard to beat the TSP in retirement. But if you want to take advantage of some tax strategies on picking exactly which investments to sell so you don't sell in a down market, QCDs, giving to charity the most effectively, having lots of investment options, having potentially lower fees, it's hard to beat an IRA because there's so much flexibility, which again, isn't a pro for everybody, but food for thought. But I hope that's helpful in helping you decide between the TSP and an IRA in retirement, and I'll see you guys in the next video.